So spam in Google Analytics has become an increasingly big problem in recent years, as more spammers realise that there is a market and a method to doing this, and obviously these guys don't do it if it doesn't work. The idea is that you get curious about what the URL is it's showing, and you go and visit that site, and obviously then you're generating traffic for these guys. So Google Analytics spam has two variations. The first is kind of a ghost traffic, essentially. These hits that you're seeing in Google Analytics have never actually hit your website. They're essentially constructed URLs that are hitting the Google Analytics server directly through the measurement protocol, as it's known, essentially. They're faking a hit to Google Analytics using your ID. The alternative is a more traditional view of spam bots and spam. This is where actual spiders or scripts of any kind have basically come onto your website, and as part of that interaction have then logged an entry into your Google Analytics. So more traditional, where one doesn't actually hit your website and hits the Google Analytics server directly, and the other one is where it's more of a byproduct that script has been on your website. The first one is really a case of looking back to the auto dialer days. It's not that they're necessarily targeting your particular Google Analytics ID, it's that they've got an auto dialer mentality of how many different Google Analytics accounts can we hit. So similar to your auto dialer, you've got your web property ID, and it will just increment one by one, hitting these different IDs. The idea being to put that referral, put that host name into as many different Google Analytics IDs as possible to get as many curious people to go and look and see, well, what is this website that's referring me traffic? Now, of course, what we've seen in this case is that in many cases, the first part that we've got there, so the ones in this particular case, is the account ID. The next part is the actual property ID in terms of increasing that. So if you were to go into Google Analytics today and create a new account, you'd be given the three different parts of this. So UA always stays the same. Then you'd be given a number. Now, that number is unique to that particular account, to that particular property. But then you can create sub-properties within that account. So -1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. What we've seen is that they only ever traditionally would hit -1 in most cases. So what we've started to do now and to recommend is that you do not use the -1. So if you're creating a new web property, skip -1 and go instantly and create the next property ID, so that you've got your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 -1 unused, and your -2 and upwards are the ones that you're actually going to use. We'll show you how to do that shortly. The other part to that is consider the host name. So the host name is the proper, the actual domain name that's hitting that is logging that particular hit. Where there's a ghost hit, so they've never actually been on your website, what you'll find is that either that has been faked, or that it is completely empty. It will never actually match your domain name, because as we mentioned earlier, it's more of an auto dialer mentality rather than targeting you. They don't know that your property ID is necessarily matched to your domain name. So one of the easiest ways to get rid of those particular pieces of traffic is to add a filter in Google Analytics that says only include traffic that's hit my particular host name. And again, we'll show you how to do that. So let's have a look in Google Analytics. So we've gone into Google Analytics. We've got our three different areas here. So we've got account, property, and view level. Within there, what we're interested in mainly is the property level at this stage. What we talked about before, obviously, was that most of the spam that we've seen is hitting that -1 account. So in this case, what we've done is we've created a -2, and that would be the one that we'd want to use for our tracking. So if we had -1 live already on the website, then we want to make sure that we update it to be changed to -2 or -3 or whatever we're using. Once we're in there, as we can see, the first thing we want to do then is make sure that we rename that -1. So we can move it to the trash can and just delete it, but if we want to keep it for testing purposes, we can just give it a name, such as no longer used, for example. In this case, we would just change that and then hit save. Once we go back, you may not automatically see the change, sometimes you have to refresh the page basically. Once you refresh the page, then you'll see your new name that you've given that particular property. So here we can see that that particular property updates to no longer used, so anyone that's looking at it in the future knows that this isn't a live particular ID. Now that we've changed it to -2, we can be sure that we'll get slightly less traffic. However, there are some other steps. As we talked about earlier, the other part is looking at the actual host name. So if we're looking at the host name, what we want to do is go in and add filter for it. So what we're basically saying to Google Analytics is only treat traffic into this view that has traffic coming from this particular website host name. So if we add a new filter, and we give it a meaningful name, so usually I would just start it with hostname : and then the name of the host name. So if we do that in this case, www.mysite.com as an example, then we would select down below that, include only traffic to the host name that is equal to, and then we would give our host name. At this point, we could then hit verify this filter. It would then go away and check previous day's data and say whether or not that was a certain percentage of the traffic. So useful for testing. However, the other part to that is if you have multiple subdomains, such as shop. Or resources. Or anything else that's hitting that site, that wouldn't be included in that particular hostname because you're saying only include traffic to www. If that's the case, we delete www and we change it to equal to the ends with. So anything before that is absolutely fine as long as the host name that is sending traffic to that particular view is mysite.com. We'll then change the name just to reflect that, so you know exactly what's tracking in there, because believe me, in a few months' time when you check in there and you're not sure why something isn't tracking, you'll be glad you've updated that name. So once we've done that, that's now going to track any subdomain to that particular site. If you had multiple top-level domains, so such as a third-party e-commerce site, you would need to create a custom filter and then use regular expressions. And certainly if that's something you're interested in, by all means comment in the comments, and we'll be more than happy to send you to the right place to find out more information on that. For now, we'll leave it as mysite.com. We'll hit save, and that's that added. So we've now changed our property ID, and we've also changed the filter. So that's two really easy steps, changing it to use -2 and adding that particular filter for the host name. That is guaranteed to cut down some of that spam traffic. Now, of course, with spammers, you're never going to be 100% foolproof, but these are two steps that are so easy to make. Another one is if you go into the view settings, there's actually an option down the bottom that it says exclude all hits from known bots and spiders. So earlier when we were talking about the two different types of spam, the other type was ones that were actually on your site. Now again, this is just a tick box, so you might as well tick it. It's not going to do any harm. Basically, Google has a database of IP addresses that it knows to be known spammers. By ticking that box, you're basically saying to Google Analytics, we authorize you to exclude that traffic from our particular view here. So we'll tick that and we'll hit save. And there's 3 really easy steps that we've done in a matter of minutes to exclude that spam traffic. If you have any questions, please do feel free to ask in the comments and we will help where we can.